Welcome to my dioramic recounting of the Battle of Bannockburn, fought between the Kingdom of Scotland and England, June 23rd to June 24th, 1314. Fought between the armies of Robert the Bruce and the Scottish Kingdom, and the armies of Edward II, shown here next to the flag, the son of Edward Long Shanks. Edward Long Shanks is now dead, and here's the English army. A brief word about Robert the Bruce. Once William Wallace was dead, the Scottish bishops needed someone else to form up the resistance. Robert the Bruce was head of the other Scottish family that had claimed the crown. And the Scottish bishops turned to him now and actually crowned him king in defiance of Longshanks. Robert the Bruce as king had about the worst start you could have had. He killed the head of the Balliol family, who he was supposed to be forming an alliance with. His armies were thoroughly defeated by Edward Long Shanks, who was still alive at that point. His wife was captured by the English, and he had to go on the run and hide. But as the old saying goes, when there's nowhere else to go but up, you go up, and that's actually what happened to Robert the Bruce. He pulled together some supporters, mounted a very effective guerrilla war. He was the great guerrilla leader, not William Wallace. Eventually he got a big enough force that he began beating the English armies. And Edward Longshanks remained totally oblivious to this for a number of years. He thought, Wallace is dead, I've retaken all the enemy castles, no big deal. By the time he finally realizes that Robert the Bruce is a threat, it's too late. He dies. Bruce continues, and finally he's got all of Scotland, except for Stirling Castle, which was right next to Stirling Bridge. Edward II, meanwhile, unlike his father, Edward II, the English king at this point, is about as bad a king as you can be. Nobody likes him, nobody trusts him, nobody respects him. But the English don't want to lose Scotland, and they know if they lose Stirling Castle, their reign over Scotland will effectively be at an end. Robert the Bruce, again shown here, and his brother Edward the Bruce, had fought a war by the book, unlike Wallace, who broke the rules at Stirling Bridge. They fought very much a war of chivalry. Stirling Castle, they reached an agreement with the English defending Stirling Castle, which would have been a little bit further up the map here to the north, that if the English could not lift the siege by mid-July, note the date here, June 23rd, the garrison would surrender. That'd be, allow the honors of war and march out. So this is a battle that's being fought on the clock. Edward II realizes he finally has to do something. He's finally acted. He's put together an army of the usual heavy armored on horseback, men-at-arms, and of course the famous English longbows. And of course, once again, the longbows are in the back of the line. Now, terrain, the Scots, on the other hand, have a very long Schiltron wall. They also, because Bruce has a pretty good relationship with the nobility, are finally getting a decent amount of cavalry. But the real story of this battle is, once again, terrain. It is not fought along a river. The Bannockburn, as you see right here, is essentially a pretty big stream, but it's very fordable, it's very walkable. The problem is, if you notice with all these sort of green patches here, it's very swampy. Anywhere where you see that sort of a little sort of bushiness here, that's swamp. That means you can't, men-at-arms, knights on horse, even longbowmen cannot walk across it, which means you've only got a couple places to cross. A little narrow wooden bridge here, another little narrow wooden bridge here, and then there's a little bit of the stream. The rest is kind of impassable. They might say, why not the Scots just go, put a Schiltron here, a couple Schiltrons here. English can't cross, story over. Well, although everyone's supposed to line up and fight, doesn't mean you have to fight at an obvious disadvantage. If the Scots are deployed, again, here and here, the English just would have crossed somewhere else. By pulling back, it looks like, okay, we're going to abide by the rules. You come across, you fight us, we'll have a nice, even battle. But look at where the Scots are deployed. They're all up on a hill, which is going to do a lot, combined with the Schiltrons, to neutralize any advantage of heavy cavalry. Also, there's wood. Also, the flanks are well guarded. Here it's swamp and woods, getting around the Scottish right. And here on the Scottish left, there's also woods. But look at the woods. They're not dense. Actually, cavalry, which normally can't move through woods at all, can maneuver through it pretty well. Infantry can. And in fact, it constantly befuddles the English. The Scots are able to move in and out of these woods. They never figure out that, as the Duke of Wellington said at the woods at the Battle of Waterloo, that an army can pass through these woods like rainwater through a grate. The English don't pick up on this. They think the woods are impassable, and that's going to be a big advantage. Scots on a hill, line can't be flanked, and yet the woods, which are blocking the English, the Scots, in particular the Scottish cavalry, so here, here, and here, can maneuver through them. And that failure to realize that is going to eventually give the Scots the battle. The terrain will do a lot to decide the way this battle goes. The first day of the Battle of Bannockburn has begun, and it's begun with a classic English cavalry charge. Here on the English left, the Earl of Clifford has crossed the Bannockburn and is leading his knights in a charge on the Scottish Schultrons to the English right. To the English left, the Earls of the Earls of Gloucester and Hereford are leading their charge against the Scottish right. Now you might want to think, why are the English doing this again? They've charged Schultrons twice before at Stirling Bridge and at Falkirk, and it hasn't gone well. Well, as they say, that's the nice things about the English, they never give up. They've also charged so quickly that they have left their infantry behind. The Bannockburn is an impediment to cross, but it's not as bad as Stirling Bridge. But still, mounted knights move faster than infantry. The men-at-arms cannot support the cavalry charges. That's true for the Earl of Clifford and the Earls of Hereford and Gloucester. Both have their infantry way too far back to help. And of course, the English longbows, the most useful thing against Schultrons, are way behind in the rear again and can't get into the fight. One interesting thing about this battle, Robert the Bruce here has conspired with the Earl of Lancaster, one of the uncles of Edward II, and about a quarter of the English army has simply not shown up to the battle. This will be revealed later that the parts of the English army committed treason against their king because they didn't like their king. So not only does Edward II not have all the troops he should have, not only are his most useful troops not able to get into the fight, his cavalry is charging unsupported against the strongest possible Scottish Schultron position. Now, we can all pretty much guess how this is going to go. Okay, so here we are, June 23rd, first day of the Battle of Bannockburn, and it's knights away and knights going down. Edward II has sent his knights off in a charge against the Scottish Schultrons on a very strong hill position, and to nobody's surprise, the charges are breaking up with heavy casualties. The English infantry is getting across in pretty good order. If it had been given a chance, it could have supported the charge, but the knights simply raced out ahead. It is unclear whether Edward II lost control of his army or made a tactical mistake, but knights charging out ahead of their infantry and getting beaten in what's sometimes called a piecemeal, killing one part of the army while another part of the army is away, happened quite a bit. It happened to the Crusaders against the Russians. It happened to the Crusaders against the Middle Eastern warriors in the Crusades against Saladin. Well, it may have been also that Edward II, shown here, he has crossed with his army, knowing that he's got this time limit, that he's got to relieve Stirling Castle by July 15th, or he loses it and loses Scotland, just may have been in too big a hurry and didn't take enough assessment of the situation. He did not have a lot of battlefield experience. He simply may have overruled his lords, but for whatever reason, this unwise cavalry charge has been launched, and it's been broken up quite effectively. And it's Schultrons 1, and the English knights nothing. The English are going to have to reform and figure out what to do. I do think that this battle did start late, given the fact that essentially you only have this one charge, and in the battle there's no more action for the rest of the day. So I do think this may have been a rush charge undertaken late in the day. But the chronicles aren't quite clear. And of course, once again, like I said, there is the English infantry. Can't get into the fight, it's too far back. And of course, the one thing that does work against Chilterns, our friends the English longbows, are simply not being allowed to get in the fight. They're in the back of the line. I mean, just, leave it to the English. Their best troops are not allowed to get into the fight. Well, we'll just have to see how this is going to pick up on June 24th. Right now, Robert the Bruce and his brother Edward the Bruce have got to be feeling pretty good about themselves. And Edward II is probably starting to get a little nervous. But we got one more day to go. One final note on the first day of Bannockburn. At one point, Robert the Bruce, shown here, managed to get himself separated from his troops and was charged by an English knight, Henry de Bohun. Legend has it, de Bohun missed with his lance. Wallace rose up in the saddle, raised his great axe, struck Hugh straight through the helmet and skull and killed him, and that was born the great legend of Robert the Bruce. You'll see it in all kinds of art depictions. Did it actually happen? Possibly, but it definitely led a great deal of credence to the legend of Robert the Bruce. He, by the way, did manage to get back to his troops. And so here we are, the morning of June 22nd, June 24th, the second day of the Battle of Bannockburn. The English army are all set up. They've crossed the Bannockburn, and it looks like there's a plan of sorts. Edward II has massed his cavalry on the left to charge the Scottish Chilterns on the left. The name of this hill the Scots are on does have a name. It's called Gillies Hill. It runs the length of the battlefield. Ideal for Chilterns who are already strong against cavalry to set up on a hill, which is even more to the disadvantage of cavalry. But this is not going to just be a simple charge. Edward has set up his infantry in the middle, both to hold off the Scottish Chilterns that are not being attacked and to support the cavalry. And finally, he has gotten his longbows across in a position where they can shower arrows on the Scottish left, or the English right, depending on how you look at things. And it looks like the plan is distract the Scots on the left and use longbows like you have against the Welsh phalanxes and against the Scottish phalanxes at Falkirk to wipe out the Chilterns and win the battle. It's a good plan. Longbows are the death of Chilterns, but for one thing. That night, an English trader has crossed over to the Scottish camp and told Robert the Bruce exactly what is going to happen. And Robert the Bruce has had time to figure out what he's going to do about it. Robert does not bring out his Scottish archers, which are pretty much worthless. Instead, what he's done is Robert has moved his Scottish cavalry way over to the extreme left of his army or the extreme right of the English army. They're hiding in these woods. The English either don't see them or don't take it seriously. Woods are supposed to be impassable to cavalry, but not these woods. Again, it's water running through, rainwater slipping through a grate. And these Scottish cavalry, although they're no match for the heavy English knights, much more heavily armored, even their horses have protection over here, but they're mobile, they're fast. There's a big wide open flank here. There's not a lot of English infantry around, and they're led by a very accomplished horseman, the Earl of Keith, and they are going to mount the final decisive blow, which is going to neutralize the threat of the English longbows. Oh yes, the Scots are so sneaky hiding in these woods, but the English don't take it seriously. Okay, it's getting on the second day of battle, June 24th, Battle of Bannockburn. Edward II has launched thinks he's launching a pretty well coordinated attack. On the left, this is happening. His knights, supported by infantry, are attacking the Scottish Chilterns or phalanxes on the hill. The Scottish Right, commanded by Robert the Bruce, is standing firm, but with the English infantry and supports, the knights shouldn't take too many losses. In the center, Edward's got a strong reserve of infantry in case it's needed elsewhere, but on the right, things have not gone to plan at all. The Scottish cavalry has emerged from the woods, has ridden down swiftly around the English flank into the English rear, and is just wiping out the English longbows before they can get an arrow out. The Scottish Chilterns were supposed to be destroyed by rains of longbow arrows as they were at Falkirk, but nothing's happening. They're just standing firm. The English longbows are being ridden down like grass. The woods that were supposed to be impenetrable were anything but. The Scots have used them well. The English have been caught by surprise. And now the battle is the English longbows are out of the picture. Despite its strong presence of cavalry and infantry, Edward II is in trouble. The tide of battle has turned in favor of Robert the Bruce and Edward the Bruce. The Earl of Keith's cavalry charge, by taking out the archers, has now put the Scots in control of the battlefield. The tide has turned against the English. On the far left, the Chiltern phalanx has stood firm. The English infantry and cavalry have taken losses. They have broken and are retreating. In the center, Edward II has, some aid from his nobles, has actually redeployed his infantry reserve. It's now from a long defensive perimeter, extending all the way to his right flank. They've driven off. The Scottish cavalry, which is also broken off the charge, the cavalry was only sent there to wipe out the English longbows, which they've done. The English longbows are either dead or have tucked tail and are running. Now you might wonder why the English would desert their brother Englishmen. Well, a lot of them, although they call them the English longbows, a lot of the longbows were actually from Wales, which was recently conquered, and they didn't have a whole lot of love for England. They were skilled, they were willing to be used as mercenaries, but if things went bad, they tended to run, which is what's happened here. Chilterns have suffered very few losses. They're in very good condition, ready to go on fighting. And notice the Scottish cavalry is virtually intact. It's not running away, it's redeploying. Chilterns lined up, ready to go. There's Edward the Bruce, Robert the Bruce, and the Chilterns. Even if the English lords can rally the English left, they only have cavalry and men-at-arms, and those don't hold up well against Chilterns. Basically, all Robert the Bruce has to do now is come off his hill and charge, and things will not go well for Edward II and the English. And now it's phalanx/Chiltern time. Here comes the Scottish Chilterns fighting in phalanx formation. They've come off the hill and they are charging slowly and methodically straight towards the English. These are groups that all have intense local loyalties. No one wants to break ranks and go home and explain why everyone else is dead and they're alive and they lost. This is the secret of phalanx warfare, strong local loyalties, but tied to a central leader, Robert the Bruce. The common people trust him. But unlike Wallace, the Scottish aristocracy on horseback also trust him. Bruce, under Bruce's lieutenant, the Earl of Keith, has done a very smart thing. He's pulled the Scottish cavalry back. No need to risk any losses. They've wiped out the Scottish longbows with virtually no casualties to themselves. He's put them in a very strong position here to the far Scottish left. Why is that good? The English now have to form a long perimeter with their backs to the Bannockburn. The Scots don't have enough troops to cover the length of the line. You notice there's this extension here. You might say, well, why don't the English just swing over and flank and come to the rear? They can't, because the Scottish cavalry is sitting right here. If these guys move over in a flanking maneuver, guess who's going to come down right on the rear and wipe them out? They've already seen what happened to the English longbows. These guys are out of the battle. They're pinned. They can't move. The Scots can leave their flank open and exposed because the cavalry is protecting it. and nobody's lost anything. As the old saying goes, success breeds success, and intelligent leadership will always build loyalty. And it's at this point to say it's just going to be a matter of counting the dead. The English men-at-arms are well armed, they're reasonably well trained, but tactical experience has shown they're no match for these long-speared Schiltrons. They just can't get at them. Same thing with the cavalry. The cavalry has no room to maneuver, and head-on charges against Schiltrons don't work very well. One Schiltron charge, and this battle should be over. Notice Edward II seems to know what's going on. He's got himself right by the bridge, so he can, as I say, make a quick getaway. The English lords, knights, and men-at-arms are still willing to fight, but the tactical situation is just totally in favor of Scotland. Schiltron's local loyalty, strong national leader, and in this situation here where they can just charge head-on with no concern for their rear or flanks, it's all over by counting the dead, and there are going to be a lot of English dead. And the battle has become a rout. The Scottish Schiltrons, under the leadership of Edward the Bruce and Robert the Bruce, have steadily advanced in good order. The English knights and the men-at-arms take losses and simply break and run. They can't do anything against the Schiltrons. They're leaving their dead. The English are leaving their honor. They're breaking and running across the Bannockburn. It's not a wall. You can get across it. Going a little slow. And of course, Edward II has done what he's done best. He's showing his rear and running for home. Scottish cavalry has stayed out of the fight, but covering the flank well. A couple of words of note. Although it's the year 1314, it'll take the Scots another 14 years to finally achieve complete independence. Stirling Castle will surrender on time July 15th, and the Scots will appear to have complete physical independence, which they do. But the English are successfully able to convince the Pope that the Scots are refusing to go on a crusade instead of fighting them, so the Pope will excommunicate Robert the Bruce. He still needs to get his wife back, and the English just stubbornly, under Edward II, just stubbornly refuse to give in despite the loss of Stirling Castle. Eventually, though, it will all work out, and by 1328, Edward II has been deposed by his own queen and her lover, who are in turn deposed by Edward II's son, Edward III, who will simply finally cash in the chips and end the war. Robert the Bruce will indeed become King of Scotland, and his victory is a victory of a lot of the forces that have been shaking the medieval world. Nationalism, for one. The Scots refuse to be governed by the English. That's why you can raise a big, huge Schiltron army of either very low-level warriors or even just common folk. Robert the Bruce has also, unlike William Wallace, been able to convince the mounted Scottish aristocracy that he can fight, that he can lead an effective army. He's earned their trust. The Catholic Church, which was the Catholic Church bishops in Scotland who originally convinced William Wallace to rebel, then crowned Robert the Bruce king, they are going to keep their autonomy in Scotland. They will not be under the Scottish monarchy's thumb. They'll essentially be in partnership with it. The king will be the protector of the church. But something else has also emerged in all of this. Excuse me, Edward II and his father Edward Long Shanks kind of viewed loyalty as something that was held by force, by bribery, and by victory. Robert the Bruce discovers something else along with the bishops and the nobility. A king doesn't own his kingdom. A king is, in a sense, the highest employee of the kingdom. The king holds his position on the basis of making good decisions for the people, for the church, for the aristocracy. And if the king is not making good decisions, he can be removed. This is something the English had been sort of toying with the provisions of Oxford and Magna Carta, but it gains its final articulation in Scotland. And we're going to see this run through Scottish history. It eventually will transfer across the Atlantic, and there are many Scottish ministers who will help write the Declaration of Independence based on this concept. that the ruler of a country can be brought to book if the ruler is not doing his job. As for Edward II, like I said, he is deposed by his wife and her lover. He's killed, and his son Edward III will take over, who will actually kind of follow, build kingship more or less based on Edward III. More or less based on, Robert the Bruce and what he does. A final word about our friend, the Chilterns. The Scots were not the only ones who used this phalanx formation. As we said, the Welsh tried, but were wiped out by the English along the way. But interesting, another group of people who did were Flemish city-states. Again, strong local loyalties like the Scottish clans. You don't want to go home and explain why you're alive and everyone else is dead. And the Flemish or Belgians used their phalanxes very effectively against French knights. And one more final point. The Scots were not invincible at all times. Edward the Bruce will lead a Scottish invasion of Ireland in the hopes of, one, opening a second front, but also to free Ireland from English rule. It's a disaster. Edward II actually musters a very good army, crushes him, and it's one of Edward II's few victories. Well, I guess that's enough. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.